Hello guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and today I'm reviewing episode 1 of Class by Patrick Ness. So I'm just going to put it out there straight away. I love this show. I think this show is amazing. I have no idea why it's on BBC Three instead of on a Saturday night. I mean, I know it would have to be a little bit later than the Doctor Who slot, but I feel like more people need to see this because this show is genuinely really, really good. So before we get into the episode itself, I wanted to talk a little bit about like the preconceptions coming into this, because this was announced a long time ago and some people were excited and some people weren't. And where would I put this show sort of genre-wise? Do you know what? I think it's a mixture of... It is very much in the middle of Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's also a little bit... Well, I mean, it's for young adults. It's young adult television, so it is sort of like Skins, but with aliens and with more heart, and it feels like the characters feel very Russell T Davies era Doctor Who, and from me, you'll know that's a huge thumbs up because they feel very real. There's a lot of diversity in it. Actually, I have to talk about the diversity thing. When I say there's a lot of diversity in it, what I mean is that I feel like the characters are very real characters, and they come from different walks of life, and they're not all straight white guys and, you know, going through the problems of straight white guys in society, which, you know, I'm sure many interesting stories can be told about straight white guys in society, but, you know, we need a little bit more than that in our media, I think. And a lot of people have been complaining from the start. When they announced the cast of Class, there were loads of people online saying, oh no, it's for the social justice warriors, it's so PC, I won't be watching that. Now, this is before they've even seen the show. They literally thought this show would be too PC and pandering to the social justice warriors because not all the characters were white people, because it was a mixture of girls and boys, and because one of the characters in the trailer, we know that their sexuality is not straight. These people baffle me. I know I talk about this a lot, but they say, oh, they're just pandering to the social justice crowd and it's not like real life. And it's like, they feel like seeing people of colour and seeing people that aren't straight, they feel like like just watching these people's lives, these people just living their lives, is unrealistic. Come on, you people watch Doctor Who. I just don't get how you can think that, how you can take all the alien stuff seriously, and then you see people of colour living their lives and gay people living their lives, and suddenly it's too far for you, it's too fantastical. And I can tell you, as a bisexual person myself, I'm a biracial person myself, we do exist and we live lives just like everyone else. So that is pathetic, and to anyone who's saying that it's like pandering to social justice people, it's not. I would argue it's just an accurate representation of life. It's an accurate representation of London. I've spoken about this a lot, but when I last went to London, it was a pretty diverse place. You know, it wasn't all like... This is a problem I've had with BBC Sherlock before, because obviously BBC Sherlock is set in central London, and yet it's very predominantly white. There are great things about that show as well, but I don't think it really shows the reality of life. Anyway, I'm getting away from the point. So yes, this show is very diverse, and that does tick boxes for me. That's not how I've rated the show. I think this show is great based on the show itself, but for me that's amazing, because something which has bothered me a little bit about Doctor Who recently has been that maybe it hasn't shown us those other perspectives, and that's very disappointing to me. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. I love all the different eras of Doctor Who. There's a lot of stuff which you can take from every era, but I do feel like it was lacking this perspective, and that's something amazing that Patrick Ness has given us. It's made this very relatable, and the fact that this is for young adults, the fact this is for teenagers who are just figuring stuff out, I just wish this had been around when I was younger, because the validation those people are going to feel. Hell, I felt validated. I'm a 22-year-old woman and I felt validated watching this. Okay, so the episode is called For Tonight We Might Die, a very dramatic title. So the plot of this episode, I'm assuming you've already seen it if you're watching this. There is going to be... Obviously, if you haven't already seen it, what are you doing? Go and watch it and come back to this. It's about 50 minutes long. BBC Three, seriously. You won't regret doing this, I promise you, and I would not give you a bad recommendation at all. So the opening of this show, we begin at Coal Hill School, and we kind of have this amazing, like, is it called a... My brother would know about this, he knows all about directing and that kind of thing. Is it like a panning shot? I'm not sure, but it's like a shot that goes around the characters going into school in the morning. So we have our archetypes for our characters, And something amazing, which I think that this episode has done, and that this show has done, because I've seen the other 2 episodes that are out, and they consistently do this as well, is that in a very short space of time, in 50 minutes, not only do we have a plot, which is interesting to follow, not only do we have the setting and the vibe of the place, we also get to know our 5 main characters pretty well. And I'm not just talking about names and faces, like, we get a glimpse of their home life, what they're like. I mean, after watching this first episode, you could write a paragraph on each of these characters. You can guess at what the rest of their life is like. Everything in this episode is about getting to know these characters. In 50 minutes, we have 5 pretty well sketched out characters. So that's our 4 mains and Miss Quill. That's fantastic. That's something which I think Doctor Who has maybe struggled with. I've spoken before about how I feel that sometimes in recent Doctor Who the characters just aren't, they're not big enough or bright enough. I'm one of those people, and obviously we all have our own opinions on this, but for me, when it comes to storytelling, I feel like the most important part of any story is your characters and the dynamics between your characters, because for me, you can have all the exciting things in the world going on, but you connect to that situation through the characters you care about, and they're the eyes you see through. So if you don't have that investment in the characters early on, then for me, I don't really invest in the whole thing. So I will give you a little summary of the characters. I love all of them, by the way, and I'm not even sure which is my favourite, which is a great thing, because usually I can pick out my favourite straight away, but I can't. So first of all, you've got Charlie, or Charles, who is an alien prince from another planet, and he's the last of his kind. Charlie is socially inept. He reminds me a little bit of Spock or Vision. He's that typical socially inept alien. He's just really, really funny, very sweet, very kind, perhaps a little bit kind of privileged because of his upbringing. You can see that sometimes he doesn't always understand other situations, the complexity of them. He's looked after by Miss Quill, and I think the relationship between Miss Quill and Charles is kind of a bit like Bran and Osha from Game of Thrones, where you've got the sort of like entitled privileged one, and then you've got the like rebellion leader, and as a punishment they're sort of tied to that person, but they actually really like each other. And I think it's really clear that Miss Quill does have affection for Charles, and it reminds me of that a lot. But there's so many dynamics in that relationship to explore. So Miss Quill is actually quite nasty, and I really, really like that about her. I love that we have a sort of nasty anti-hero female character who is not sexualized. It's everything to me, because I feel like sometimes when you get these characters in Doctor Who these days, it has to come with that sexualization. That doesn't happen with Miss Quill. Miss Quill is just nasty for the fun of it, but there's also layers to her. Like, there's so much to Miss Quill. I really, really love her character. So then we have Ram. Ram is kind of one of my unexpected favourites. I say I didn't have favourites. I probably will change this constantly. Ram is like the cool dude of the school. He's kind of the handsome one, the football player. He's got the gorgeous girlfriend. Ram is such a typical Gryffindor, and that's how I can describe him from this first episode. He is just very brave and very cocky. He comes across as a bit arrogant, but you can tell it comes from a deeper place. Can I just say as well how refreshing it is to have that cool dude character who is, you know, undoubtedly the cool guy of the school, but he is this character without demeaning women, because I feel like a lot of the time these characters have to be made into these sort of womanizing figures. That's not Ram. Ram is actually very kind and compassionate, and I just love that combination of him being that cocky, arrogant character, but he is also very kind and kind of quite sensitive, and he cares a lot about people. And I feel like it's so good because that could have become a very lazy stereotype, and it didn't. April. Oh my lord, April is lovely. April is sort of, if you watch Harry Potter or you read Harry Potter, she's kind of your textbook Hufflepuff. She's very nurturing and caring and kind. I love her speech, or that bit of dialogue about, I think it might have been her mum who said this to her, but it really struck me, the fact that there's a difference between being nice and being kind, and it's always better to be kind. That is wonderful writing. I think that's correct. That's very philosophical. I love that distinction with April. I love the fact that she, you know, helps out at school and she's nice to everybody. It's refreshing to see a really nice character on TV. Just a really nice character. She's lovely. I love the fact that we get a glimpse of her home life, and the fact that obviously her mum is disabled. They obviously have a really close bond, and she's a real nurturer. She's so sweet. I love April so much. Okay, Tanya. Tanya is, okay, at this point, I'm gonna say probably, if I had to pick a favourite out of all the characters, I think I would have to go for Tanya just at this point. I really like her. I think she's very relatable. So Tanya is younger than the rest of them. She's 14 years old and she's skipped up to sixth form because she's so brainy. That's not why I find her relatable, by the way. I'm not that smart. But I think she feels a bit out of place because everyone's older than her and she's trying to fit in and she's younger, and that's relatable, that feeling of being an outsider. Obviously that's a theme that all the characters have in their own various ways. They're all outsiders slightly, which again, relatable. I love that. I think the actress Vivian, who played her in an interview, described Tanya as being woke. And I think that's really correct. I love some of the things that Tanya was coming out with. Her comments on Downton Abbey and the Bechdel test. And again, people have complained about that being like thrown in to pander to the social justice warriors, but I'm sorry, have you met teenage girls? I talk to a lot of teenage girls, and a lot of teenage girls are very socially aware. They are. I think it's doing them a real disservice to act like that's not the sort of thing that teenage girls think about. I think we're at a time in society where girls are really thinking about this sort of thing. Can I just say as well how amazing it is that this cast for this show, not the cast, the characters are in sixth form. So that's probably about 17 or 18 years old, I think. So, and then you have Tanya, who is 14, and I find it really disturbing that in a lot of media, they kind of sexualise the young characters, and I love that they didn't do that with Tanya. Tanya is very much like a real 14-year-old. She's not being sexualised. That's brilliant. And also, I think in terms of her being black and her being a woman of colour, I mean, there's been a lot of controversy about, you know, the sexualisation of black women and black children. And I think it's really important that that doesn't happen in this show. I just think that's fantastic. Oh, and bonus character alert. We didn't get this character so much, but we got Charles's boyfriend or date, Matthias, forgive me, I've forgotten the pronunciation. I absolutely love the fact that in the first episode we have a character who, I don't know if he's gay or bi or pan, I'm not completely sure, but we have a character who is interested in his own gender and it's not a thing. I love that. This is how you write that kind of thing, because it's a thing. I'm saying thing a lot, but it is a thing in the sense that it's something that the viewers see. It's something that, you know, you can't deny it. A lot of viewers like to deny it. They prefer their LGBT stuff to be all subtextual so that they can ignore it if they want. This cannot be ignored, okay? Charlie likes boys. He likes Matthias. That is there. But when I say it's not being made a thing, it's not this huge deal in the story. When he walks into the prom with his date, everyone's not like, oh, the gays are here, oh my gosh. I mean, I think the balance with that has been struck really well, because obviously they are facing, well, Matthias is facing a little bit of homophobia from his parents, but obviously we've moved on in society, and in a lot of ways things are very different. I think that's an excellent balance to strike. As an LGBT person myself, I think that's a really healthy way of looking at things, and I really, really applaud that. I think it's brave, and it shouldn't be brave in this day and age, but it really, really is, and I'm so happy that they went with that and the way it was dealt with. And when April realised that Charlie was gay or didn't like her or was into boys, it wasn't like, oh no, gay person. It was just like April seeing it in character, like, oh, typical me, I would go for someone who couldn't possibly be interested. So I have to talk about the Doctor and my pure joy at seeing 12 in this episode. And you know why I felt such utter elation at seeing him? Because this is how the 12th Doctor should be. This is perfect 12th Doctor. Like, for me, I feel like in the past the Doctor's become too much of an action hero and he's become too friendly with guns and killing, and he's let that slide. That's not the Doctor I know and love, but this was a Doctor that saved. We saw him save people twice this episode. So first he saved Charles and Miss Quill because they were the last of their kind. Beautiful, doctory. That's exactly what you want when you think of the Doctor. When all hope is lost, you just imagine that TARDIS materialising and hearing that noise, and it's wonderful and it's like a fairy tale and I love it. When he turned up a second time, I thought he was so excellently written, and obviously Peter Capaldi's amazing. I've spoken about this before. I think he's such a great Doctor. But this is a Doctor that turned up to save people, but he turned up to save people without using violence. His conversation with Miss Quill was spectacular in my personal opinion, because now this is something which I think is amazing. So if you think about the situation between Miss Quill and Charles and what we know of the society they came from, the background they came from. Now there's obviously, we don't know the full story, but there's two perspectives on this, and we can imagine that it's sort of like, I think about it maybe a little bit like colonialism, that kind of thing. Well, that's the way I was seeing it anyway. So you've got a privileged class and an oppressed class, and Miss Quill sees herself as a rebel leader and she's fighting for her rights, and Charles sees her as a criminal who needs punishing. Now when the Doctor meets Miss Quill, I thought it was fantastic that he did not want to punish her for fighting for her rights or for being that rebel leader. That was not what he cared about. Obviously, I mean, we don't know the situation there, but because of that, I'm kind of thinking that Miss Quill had a bit of a point in this situation. What the Doctor cared about was the collateral damage. The Doctor cared about the fact that a student died under Miss Quill's care. That is so perfect, Doctor. I love that clarification was made. I think that was really important, and it was just a really, really clever bit of writing. The whole idea of the Doctor saying to Miss Quill, you do not need weapons, use your brain. Perfect. Fantastic. Maybe not entirely practical, Doctor. It's very easy for you as you have a TARDIS. But the message is perfect. Now, a lot of people have said that there's too much sort of violence and gore, and I have seen the second episode, and actually I have to agree with you that the gore isn't... I'll talk about this in my next review. The gore isn't necessarily to my taste, but I do think that it's done in a way which is acceptable, to be honest. I don't have an actual problem with it, it's just not to my taste. Obviously in this episode we had a shock death. We had Rachel, Ram's girlfriend, dying, and I did not see that coming, so it was quite a shock when suddenly Ram got covered in blood. Poor Ram, oh my goodness. Now here's the thing when it comes to violence and gore, just from my perspective. People are saying it doesn't have a place in Doctor Who. I agree with them, but this is not Doctor Who, this is a new perspective. It's a sort of a spin-off of Doctor Who, so obviously you wouldn't want that in Doctor Who itself, but with Torchwood there was quite a lot of gore and violence, and I think it can work. I think if you show the emotional impact of these things happening, which, spoiler alert, you definitely do get as we go along. I mean, there's no terrible things happening and then the characters are all fine afterwards and oh, it's great. No, these characters feel it. These characters carry this with them, and it forms them as characters, it shapes them. So in a way, you know, I don't mind it at all. Also introduced in this episode, again, I can't even believe that this is just 50 minutes long, because it has everything you need in it, basically, as an opening episode. So many TV shows can learn from this first episode, I swear, because the characters are introduced, you've got the plot being introduced, you've got the Doctor coming into this, you've got the environment kind of being explored. It was just amazing. But we have the arc, so we have like the Shadow King, and he is now connected to April. I'm assuming that's going to be important in later episodes. I hope we're going to get more information about Charles and his backstory as a prince and what went on with him and Miss Quill. I want to know more about that. All these seeds have been planted in the first episode in 50 minutes. There is no excuses for other TV shows now, seriously, because we've got 5 characters. Some TV shows struggle with introducing 2 or 3 in a series, and we have all 5 plus extras being sketched in one episode, and I'm clapping for Patrick Ness and the whole cast and everyone involved in this show. I love it, I think it's amazing. Honestly, please watch this show. Please. I can't believe that it's not on TV. I should say, just being, you know, a responsible YouTuber, that I'm not sure what the actual age guidelines for this show are, but, you know, there is gore in it, so please be aware, and if you're not old enough to watch it, wait till you are old enough to watch it, okay? But honestly, what this show is going to do, and the bravery of the premise, and it shouldn't be a brave thing in this day and age to have the cast that we do, and the characters that we do, and the issues being dealt with that we do. But it is brave, and I am just so thrilled with this. Honestly, I feel like it's going to help so many people. I feel like every viewer watching this show will have at least one character they can relate to in a certain way. I mean, for me, I can relate to different ones in different ways, but I feel like everyone's got that way in, and that's so important, to have those eyes and ears. It's amazing. Okay, I'm going to go now. I love you loads. Please watch this show if you are old enough. It's fantastic. It doesn't matter. And if you're like 22 like me and you're thinking, but it's for young adults, that doesn't matter. Watch it. You'll love it. Seriously, you're missing out if you don't. Okay, I love you loads. I'll see you really soon for the reviews of number 2 and number 3. Okay, love you. Bye.